And welcome back to the program, everyone. As promised, we have been joined by State Auditor candidate Brenda Mayrack, who we've been watching her ads for a little bit of time now.
Yes.
So good to see you again.
Yeah,
thanks so much for coming on the
Welcome
program.
Pleasure to be back.
Yes.
So how's everything going? Tell us what's been happening since the last time you were on the program.
You know, it's going really well. The election is a week from Tuesday, so we're counting down the days.
Yes.
I'm doing everything I can. Today, full day, typical
Right.
day on the campaign trail. I started off at Canaan Baptist Church with Dr. Bullock, just a inspiring service there.
Yeah.
And then I've been out at area grocery stores. I find that that's a great way to just meet people. People are just, particularly Sundays are very busy.
Right.
Absolutely.
And people have mentioned, they've seen me on your show, they've seen the video.
Yes.
So I feel like, I started my campaign a year ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of starting to penetrate and percolate a little bit.
Right.
And people are saying, oh, I saw you here, I saw you there. And,
Yes.
and that tells me that the hard work's paying off. And then I was in the Newark Halloween parade where I was dressed as Princess Leia. Had a little different hairdo then.
Yeah.
And then back out at the grocery stores, and here I am. So it's a pleasure to be here again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And Shauna, first of all, we really do appreciate your taking the time out of your schedule to come back because, as we were mentioning and during the course of the prayer, it is so critical for our community to have an opportunity, and as often as possible, to hear what your message is to them and what you're all about. And for us to be in a position to join in the conversation is very important to us. And so we don't take it lightly that you've come back to visit us. We appreciate it. And our viewers appreciate it.
And I'm happy to be here. I mean, really, as I've been campaigning this year, the question I get asked the most is, well, what does the state auditor do?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
And as soon as I get to talk about it a little bit, they
Right.
understand why it's important, why it impacts their life, and,
Right.
and why the person in that role really matters. So, you want me to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please
we
go
do.
for
I mean, the
it.
state auditor is in charge of making sure that our tax dollars are spent properly, and that's state tax dollars, that's federal money that comes through the state government,
Exactly.
which is several $billion per year that funds a lot of programs that people depend on.
Right.
And it's also property taxes, 2/3 of which go to public school districts. And education is a huge issue right now
Yeah, it
for
is.
our city and for our state, and making sure that the state auditor is conducting annual audits in a way that parents and taxpayers and education policymakers can understand how that money's being spent is really important, because the state auditor doesn't set education policy, but certainly can play a huge role in making sure that those who do understand how the money's being
Right.
spent.
Right. And with your background, you have the training and the aptitude for that position. So why do you feel as though you are the best candidate for our audience to consider voting
Right.
for?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm an attorney. My law practice focuses on auditing and audit defense. I'm a small business owner. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I've built an app that works in the legislative process, and we've had the same state auditor for 25 years.
Yeah.
And I think he's had a chance to do the job, and it's time for a fresh set of eyes on the books of Delaware. It's time for someone to come in with new energy and new ideas. And I actually released a 5-point plan 2 weeks ago, talking about my ideas to use technology in the office, to do more performance audits, which are really going to find savings. And it's more than just making sure the numbers add up.
Right.
It's actually looking for savings, looking for ways that government can work better and we can save money. Filling vacant staff positions.
Right.
There's 10 positions in the office for staff auditors. The legislature has provided the funding for it, but they haven't been filled.
Right.
And I have to think that, still coming out of this tough economy, there's 10 Delawareans out there who are qualified and happy to have a job, state job with good benefits,
Okay.
doing important work
Yeah.
in the state auditor's office.
Yeah. And how important do you think it is for the auditor's office to have a rapport with the community in terms of keeping them abreast of the results of these audits? Because sometimes, as a citizen myself, I don't feel sometimes as if I'm able to see enough of the information. I hear a lot about it at certain times, but Do you have an ideal of a vehicle for disseminating information, or do you feel that it's adequate as it is?
Well, certainly, putting the reports on the website is important, but I think actually making audit reports more understandable, more accessible, breaking it down in a way that someone who doesn't necessarily have an accounting background can understand how our tax dollars are being spent. That's really what I want to do. I think you have to be careful, though, because you don't want to politicize the office. You don't want to use the office to go after a vulnerable community or population, or to go after your political enemies, or even to protect your political allies. That's all inappropriate. So I think taking all of that out is important. But one of my ideas in my plan is to actually do more outreach to the nonprofit sector, because a lot of nonprofit groups in our state provide important services that people rely on here in the city of Wilmington, and yet they don't have the knowledge or the resources to really put proper procedures and controls in place. But I think the auditor's office can really play a role in helping those groups clean things up before they have problems, rather than going in after problems have occurred and then embarrassing them and really affecting their ability to get funding from other sources as well. As a state auditor, certainly there's authority to make sure that our tax dollars are being spent properly. But I think there's a more proactive way to do that, and a less damaging way.
How do you do that? How do you go in and help the nonprofits?
Well, I think you use the expertise of the auditor's office, and you put a package together, a package of procedures and controls, and say, look, here's what you need to do. And just go give it to them, train them, spend time with them ahead of problems, so that we can prevent things before they go wrong.
Right.
Do you think
basically.
do you have a question?
Well, just to piggyback on what you and what Brenda was saying, because as Brenda was saying, being able to assist some of the nonprofits to come into compliance, because a lot of times non-compliance is out of a lack of knowledge. And not to make an excuse.
Right, and just a lack of record keeping. Often in the auditing world, if you don't have the records, it where there's smoke, there's fire. You think there's a problem. So really just helping nonprofit groups keep the proper records, I think will mean there's less suspicion of problems, and you'll be able to show, look, everything's here, everything's adding up, nothing wrong is going on. But you have to have those procedures in place in advance.
And maybe assisting them with, here's how you can do this by yourself before anyone else comes looking.
Exactly.
So that you can keep track of it, and you can not babysit, but you can monitor one another and make sure, listen, you said you were going to do this. And if Michael and I are doing that, Michael tells me he's going to do something, I'm going to check our procedures to see if that's what he's really doing, so that by the time someone else from the outside comes in, we've already been looking at one another's stuff.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple. If you think of there's actually a charter school, Delaware Military Academy, where there was an issue, and what the superintendent apparently was doing was he was submitting, charging things on a credit card, and then submitting a receipt for reimbursement, and then submitting the credit card statement for reimbursement. So it's a pretty obvious problem, and that's where, again, the auditor's office can come in with some expertise, whether it's for a charter school or a public school district or a nonprofit group, and say, here's some simple procedures we can put in place to make sure that this kind of double dipping doesn't occur.
Exactly. And also people need to know what penalties are and what exposure is, as you mentioned, because you don't want to necessarily see people take themselves out of position to receive necessary fundings, because sometimes the performance of the service is where most of their energies and concentration.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a quick break, Brenda, but when we come back, do you think we could go through the rest of your 5 points?
Sure.
Okay, do you mind?
No, that's fine.
Okay, I know you want to get home. I know you're
tired. No,
tired.
that's fine. Let's do that.
We're going to ask you at home to stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Brenda Mayrack and her 5-point plan.
I'm Brenda Mayrack, and I'm running for state auditor.
What's this all about? State auditor?
Am I supposed to be looking at you or looking at the camera?
Lawyer in dark suit, with white shirt. That's what I do. Yeah.
I got it. Go for it. Take 3.
I've known Brenda a long time. Brenda was a student of mine here at the University of Delaware.
She was one of those really bright students, one of the brightest ones I've had. But what really stood out is the number of questions she was always asking in class, every class. Just the kind of thing that you would expect somebody interested in the auditor's office to be doing.
Came back to the city of Wilmington with a really large, successful firm. Recently went out on her own and has done extremely well.
Well, she's a volunteer on the ship. She's very good.
She's a joy to work with and to be around, and is really seen as a leader in her field.
Brenda's a fierce competitor. When we had an injury, she stepped up on the defense line. She can't really skate backwards, but every time she fell down, she got right back up.
When we wanted to adopt our 2-year-old that was in a foster care system, Brenda volunteered her time and talents to fight vigorously for us.
Say one thing about Brenda. Nobody works harder than Brenda Mayrack. And she's also an inventor, I hear, an app builder.
Brenda came in here with a great idea, and she really got us working hard on it.
She's really good at taking things that are old and outdated and replacing them with things that are newer and better.
And she's very motivated to do a good job. It's very important. That's why I'm supporting her as state auditor.
She's a good person. Hi, Brenda.
Thanks for taking the time today to listen to my friends, neighbors, and colleagues. I'm running for state auditor because Delaware deserves a state auditor who will work hard to make sure that our valuable tax dollars are put to their best use and aren't wasted. I look forward to meeting you on the campaign trail, and I'm asking for your vote so that we can get the state auditor's office working harder for you.